Hi, Eric Grant here. In this tutorial video, we're going to show you how to sew binding around a circle like this. And in this one, we're also going to have a hook and loop closure system. And we'll show you how to do that as well. I'm going to stick an awl in this hole, and we're going to put this on the spot we want to make of the circle. I'm going to do a 3-inch diameter circle, which means half of that is 1.5 inches. And I'm just using a chalk pencil to go around to mark our circle. There are other cutting tools for this as well, but this works pretty well. That's a small circle. Then I'm just going to come up from the middle and just say that we have a line coming up to separate the circle that we're going to cut. Now I'm going to use a hot knife for this. The main reason is I don't want unraveling to happen. I know I'm going to be putting a binding on it, but this just prevents the stitch from falling out of the edge of fabric if it gets close to it. So I'm going to cut up this line using the serrate edge hot knife and the precision cutting foot and blade. We don't have to worry about sacrificing the center because I'm not keeping that. It's the outside edge that I'm trying to keep. Look how nice this works. With this foot, you don't have to worry about damaging the tabletop, and you don't have to have a piece of glass. Now what I want to do is I want to cut slits going not too deep, because if you cut them too deep, then obviously they won't be hidden by the binding. There's no right side or wrong side to this Sattler marine grade fabric, but I'm going to act like this is the bottom side. So I'm going to put a line that is 1 inch from this cut edge down here and then 1 inch over here. I'm going to put a 1/4 inch seam stick for canvas. It could be 3/8 inch as well on there, and use the patterning ruler to make sure it adheres well. And then I'm going to fold this over and create a 1/2 inch single hem. I'm going to fold this over and create a 1/2 inch single hem. I'm going to try to keep my hands out of the way, so I'm just going to match it up to that line. I'm going to do the same thing over here, and I'm going to crease it down well. Put a straight stitch almost in the middle of that and do a little bit of reversing here at the beginning. Now that edge isn't finished, but we're only doing this as a sample. So I'm going to sew all the way to the top here, and we will do some reversing when we reach the top, and we'll do the same thing over here. This is an acrylic. It's Sattler binding 1 inch, and it's bias cut. Very important. Put it in the 1 inch swing away binder and position it in for your sewing machine. We're also going to put the sewing machine in around 4 millimeter zigzag, and we're going to reduce the stitch length to about 3 to 4 millimeters and lock it in position in both forward and reverse. Once we sew the binding on, it's going to flip up, and we want it to flip up this direction on the outside fabric. So that means we need to sew it with the wrong side up. So with the hems facing up, all you need to do is push this into the binder, and you need to have another tool. Let's first get this started sewing here. I like to sew a little bit into my binding to make sure that I'm happy with what it's doing. And I need to go over no, that's actually pretty good. Okay, so now what I need to do is I need to have a screwdriver or something that I can use to push this in, because you're going to go slow because this has to straighten out. We're straightening this all the way out, and I'm going to start off of the edge and do a little bit of reversing when I reach it. So I'm pushing it into the exiting point of the binder, and here I'll do a little bit of reversing because I'm actually in my fabric. And notice how it's curled up. I'm going to take my screwdriver and I'm going to push it in so that it's in the fold. And I'm going to sew to that point, and I'm going to stop, and I'm going to reposition this, and I'm going to push this in, and I'm going to sew. And we're just going to keep doing this until we work all the way around. But it's pushed all the way to the fold, and it's a slow process, but this is the only way that you can get it on there nicely. You don't want it to fold under either. You want it to be right up against that edge. So there, now it's in a good position. You can see that. So just straighten this out as you come to it, and then push the screwdriver in there to push it into the fold, and sew up to your screwdriver and stop, and then reposition. That's all we're going to do all the way to the end, making sure that we're not sewing any wrinkles into it. Slow process, but it definitely works. Okay, we're to the point where the hem was created here, and we will just make sure that's feeding in there nicely, and then we will do some reversing before it runs off of that. So right about there, maybe a little bit more right there. Okay, that's all there is to it. Now let's take a look out and take a look at it. And you'll notice it will curl like I talked about. I'm going to cut it long. So this is the outside surface. See the curl up? That's what I was talking about. And so that's the way where I want the curl to be, on the outside of the fabric. This is an example of a zipper, and I did a 1/2 inch hem. I probably would have done a line to 3/4 inch if I were putting in a zipper, but there's what a 1/2 inch hem would be like if you wanted to put a zipper in, a finished zipper that would separate. And you wouldn't stitch it as I did. I would baste it or pin it, and then I would sew the zipper in like this. But we're not doing a zipper, we're going to do hook and loop. First, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take scissors and I'm going to cut these so that they follow the edge. Then I'm going to take a hot knife and I'm going to touch the binding so that it doesn't unravel, and we'll do the same thing to the other leg on that other side. I want my flap to cover from here all the way down to the bottom edge. So if I measure that at 6.5 inches, I'm going to add 1 inch to that, which will mean I cut it 7.5 inches for the height of this. Then for the depth, we know that this is 1 inch between the gap, and we want 1 inch here and 1 inch here. We're going to multiply that times 2 and add a 1/2 inch just for some extra size. So we'll cut this to 6.5 inches. So this will be the height going up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put basting tape on this. This is the 7.5 inch side. And I'm going to put basting tape on this side as well over here. Then I'm going to fold this to approximately a 1/2 inch. You can measure over 1 inch if you want and fold it to that, which will create a 1/2 inch hem here and also here. So this should equal from this edge all the way up there when you're done, and it's very close. I'll probably expand this hem just a little bit so it does equal that. Yes, now it's perfect. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is this is just going to be folded in half, and we're going to sew hook and loop on this. So I'm going to baste it right here just so that we can hold it in the halfway position. And then we're going to take it to the sewing machine, and we're going to sew either the hook or the loop on it. I'm going to sew the hook on this piece because the hook doesn't look as good from the bottom side. So the hook goes on once this is folded like that. The hook can either go on this side or the other side because it's basically a rectangle. Let's take it to the machine. So here's what it looks like, and I did baste down my hook. I'm going to start right here, and we're going to sew very close to the edge. So I move my needle to the right, and I'm going to do a little bit of reversing here. And I'm in a 6mm stitch length. I'm going to sew to catch the hook, so right through it. And then when I come down over here, I'm going to sew down the edge of the hook down this side. And then we're going to sew all the way to here and do some reversing. Okay, now we're going to sew down this long leg, doing a little bit of reversing at the top, probably just 1 stitch in reverse. In other words, I go in 1 stitch, and then I push the reverse lever and I go back, and I do that a couple times so that it looks pretty good. And then I go down here and we'll do reversing down here as well. And there's what it looks like. I'm going to take this and put it so that the hook is up and match it up to this edge and the bottom edge down here. And we are going to sew approximately 3/8 inch along this edge here. So let me get it in position here. Right about there, and I'm going to put the needle in center position, which should give me enough to capture it. I can base this in place too, but I don't think I need to. Okay, we're going to sew up here, do some reversing, and sew down this side and reverse at the bottom. So we're going to take this and we're going to fold on that stitch, and sometimes if you just hammer a little bit on it, you can actually get it to create a memory, but I don't think I need to here. So we're folding on that stitch, and we're going to sew through the seam allowance on the underside. In other words, this flap on the back. Here's what I mean by hammering it. It basically just makes it remember exactly where it was, especially on the ends where there's extra fabric. Now let's sew it. So we want to be kind of close to that fold, but not right on the fold, a little bit inward of it. There we go. And my needle's to the right. Do some reversing here. Okay. Nice. With this laying about an inch open, because that's how much we hemmed out, and laying nice and flat, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift this up and just mark where the hook is, here and here with a pencil, and I'll do it up here at the top too, so I can make sure that I get it in the right spot. And I've already got, oh, this isn't my hook, it's actually my loop, I'm sorry. So I've got double-sided tape on it I put on, and we'll start from over here and go all over here, and then eventually we'll cut that off at the bottom. We're going to sew around this entire perimeter with a straight stitch. Okay, so now this is our mock-up or our sample, and this would just close up around whatever object you're trying to go around. And there you have a circle with binding all around the perimeter to give it a nice finished look.